Welcome to KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio and the Southern California Business Report, a show dedicated to highlighting successful Southern California businesses and the people behind them, with Daryl Cance and Yvette Walker. And now, here's Daryl and Yvette.
Thank you for joining us in the ABC News Talk Southern California Business Report with Yvette Walker and myself, Daryl Cance, as we focus on successful Southern California businesses from San Luis Obispo all the way to San Diego, touching all 10 counties, roughly 25 million population, and all sectors of the economy, from awe-inspiring sole proprietors to world-renowned organizations. We're covering all categories. Today, we have an amazing company of national, amazing reputation, and it's in the sector of real estate. And with that, I'm going to ask Yvette Walker to do the honors, as customary. Would you mind introducing our special guest today, Yvette?
Thank you so much, Daryl. Of course, every week is a new surprise for us, and today I am thrilled to introduce Mr. Randall Lewis. With over 45 years experience in the real estate industry, Randall Lewis is the Executive Vice President and Principal of Lewis Management Corp, a member of the Lewis Group of Companies. Randall oversees the marketing activities for all regions of the organization. His broad area of expertise includes land acquisition, market research, product design, advertising, and sales. The Lewis Group of Companies is one of the most active real estate developers in California and Nevada. They have significant master planned communities, as well as many shopping centers, apartments, and industrial projects underway throughout the region. The Lewis Group owns over 10,000 apartments and controls land for over 30,000 future homes and apartments, as well as owning and managing 30 shopping centers. Randall is an active and philanthropic supporter of health, education, and the arts. Randall serves on the executive board of the Southern California Association of Governments, otherwise known as SCAG, as well as the Southern California Leadership Council. Randall is a past trustee of the Urban Land Institute and is a current governor of the Urban Land Institute Foundation. He is also the co-chair of the San Bernardino County Alliance for Education and serves on several executive boards, including the USC Sol Price School of Public Policy and the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs. Oh my goodness, you are quite a busy person, Randall. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And you really hedged your bets by having invested in both UCLA and USC.
Yes.
Very nice, very nice. Yvette, go with the first question. You've been really looking forward to this.
Well, I have a little bit of a background and I know a little bit of the Lewis companies, but if you could please share with our audience a little bit about your company, such as where you operate and what are your main lines of business? Sure,
Yvette. Well, first, it's a family business. My parents started it, and I have three brothers in the business, and there's a third generation. So I'm one of the owners of the company, but it's not just my company. So we're really a multifaceted real estate company. We do master planned communities. We do shopping centers. We do apartments. We do property management. We do industrial developments, those big box projects you see throughout Southern California. And we also do complicated mixed-use projects. Our base of our company is in Upland. That's our headquarters and also a division office. We do a lot of work in the Inland Empire, Southern California, but we're also in LA County and we're doing something in Ventura County right now. We also have offices in Sacramento, in Las Vegas, and in Reno.
Wow.
That's a big map.
That's a big plate. That's a lot on your plate, Randall. How do you manage your time and, take care of all of those projects?
We have a great team. And again, I'm just one part of the team. We've got over 700 employees in the company. And so we've got a lot of good people, a lot of people who have been with us 10, 20, 30 years. So my particular day is spent more on the marketing side, the strategic planning side, a lot of the communication side. I don't get involved at all in the legal aspects or the construction aspects or the financing or the engineering. So I try to specialize in the things that I enjoy and the things that where I think I can make a difference to the company.
For the listeners out there, I just want to share that this is my first opportunity to speak with Randall Lewis, and to me, it's a very, very big honor, having lived in a Lewis home for decades, and I just I couldn't believe it. It was just amazing, and I recall back in the day when I bought it, and 10 years later, and 15 years later, and 20 years later, 5 and 10 years before I bought the home, there were two types of homes in this whole valley. There's homes, and there's Lewis homes, which always made me chuckle. You know, you'd look at somebody advertising a home for sale, and you'd see, you know, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, or 3-bedroom, 2-bath, the XYZ home, and then the next listing down would be 4-bedroom, 2-bath, Lewis home. And I thought, well, geez, what an amazing reputation that that the company had created. How do you were there? You had a front row seat to this whole company growing from we'll say the beginning to right now. How did that whole quality control, customer service extraordinaire, the whole time I lived in the home, I felt like I'd bought, you know, the world's most expensive house. I mean, just amazing. The phone calls were all answered. Happy people, couldn't wait to, you know, respond to any question. And to be honest with you, I didn't have any, but they would call me and say, hey, we found a better mousetrap. We would like to come out and put the better mousetrap on the house. And my God, that was 10 years later. And I thought, what an amazing testament to a home builder. How did that all start?
Sure. Well, first I'll go back. It all started with my parents. My mother and father have passed away in the early 2000s, started the company, and both of them came from service backgrounds. They had an accounting firm together where to be successful, you had to take care of your clients or they wouldn't come back. And my mother's father owned a tiny grocery store in Fontana in the 40s and 50s. And again, service was so important to them. He always said, you've got to treat the customers right. And so we were born believing in customer service. I think one reason we care a lot about it too is just our business model. A lot of companies our size might be in Arizona and Oregon and Texas, and the markets we've been in for decades. I mean, we've been in the Inland Empire since the mid-1950s, Las Vegas since the early 1960s, and Reno and Sacramento since the early 1970s. So when you're somewhere a long time, you just have to do a good job, or your reputation, it will either help you or hurt you. And we've just decided, let's make sure it helps us. So we really take care of our customers. Again, a lot of it, we thank our parents. They were very generous with us, and they were very good teachers. And they just, even then, they were obsessed with the customers, understanding what the customers wanted, trying to say, what are we doing well? What can we do more of? What are we doing poorly? What do we have to fix? But also trying to anticipate customer needs, to say, what is it that the customers might not even know they want, but that they will want when we offer it to them. So it's a customer obsession that's just been in our genes since the beginning of the company.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And Yvette had just mentioned the other, we'll call it the other aspects of your business, which is the shopping centers, the high density residential, and then of course, historically, the home building piece. Are all three of those up and running, going strong? What's the status on it?
And if it's okay, let me just give you a bit of a history on the company. My parents were accountants, as I mentioned, and then in the early 1950s, and I was born in 1951, so I had nothing to do with any of this. I was watching from a high chair as they did all of this. I have three older brothers, Richard, Robert, Roger, and they were a little more engaged, but even they weren't involved in the creation of the company. My parents had some early clients who were home builders and very small ones. And I think after World War II, a lot of people discovered Southern California and were moving here. And my parents said, if those people can do it, we can do it. So they went out on their own to start a small home building company. We started in the Pomona Valley in Pomona and Claremont, and then we gradually expanded to some other areas. As the company grew, the family grew also. And so my oldest brother, Richard, got out of college in 1965, and Robert in 1967, and Roger, I believe, in 1971, I believe. And I got out in 1973. And so it was really a lucky situation that as the company grew and the market grew, we also had more leaders that were growing up in the company. And so we went to Las Vegas in the early 1960s. My parents had a friend who had a small clothing store. And he said, oh, you should go to Las Vegas. I have a store up there and it's really doing well. And in the early 1960s, Las Vegas was nothing like it was now. But my parents decided to go there, and we've been operating ever since. And then in the 1970s, my mother's brother was also in the company. We expanded to Sacramento and Reno. Our roots, as you mentioned, were as home builders, and we were known as Lewis Homes. And we're called Lewis Homes still, but we actually don't have that name. Another company has that name. They don't use it anymore. But we grew to become one of the largest home builders in the United States and one of the largest private home builders in the United States. We sold our home building division at the end of the 1999 and early 2000. And when we sold, we still had a small group. We'd done a few apartments, a few shopping centers, a few office projects, but we were mainly Lewis Homes building houses. When we sold, we were still very interested in being in the business. All of us work because we enjoy the business. It's what we've grown up with. And so we said, let's try to expand those other areas of opportunity. So currently what we do, one of our big lines of business is what we call master plan communities. And this is where we'll buy a piece of property that could be anywhere from 100 acres to 1,000 acres or more. We go through an entitlement process. We create a vision. We work with the community and the stakeholders. We get it entitled. And sometimes if we're lucky, we could get it entitled in 3 years, but often it's 5 years or 10 years or not at all. I think later Yvette's going to ask me about some of the challenges of housing in California. And one of them is how hard it is to get projects approved. But then once the project gets approved, our role in our master plan communities is we put in what's called the infrastructure, the streets, the block walls, the sewer system. We'll work with the school district. We'll work with the traffic consultants, the engineers. And then we sell land to what we call guest home builders. And they build the houses, but we monitor the quality control for the overall community. We work closely with the city on design standards. And we work a lot on what we call social infrastructure. That in our planned communities, there's the physical infrastructure. You have to have roads and sewer and water. But for us, the social infrastructure, the volunteer programs, the community programs, the crime-free programs are really the heart and soul of our communities. We spend a lot of time on that. And then if there's land for uses other than homes, we usually do that ourselves, which leads into the next part of the business. We own currently about 30 shopping centers, and we're a very active developer of shopping centers right now. We mainly do grocery anchored shopping centers where there's a grocery store, typically a drugstore, some restaurants, a gas station, of course, somewhere for coffee. And the shopping center business has gone through a lot of challenges, but people still go to get groceries. They still go to the drugstore. So we're still big believers of that in that business. It's just going through some pretty major changes. We're also very involved in the apartment business. When Yvette introduced me, she said we have 10,000 apartments. Now we've got to change that biography. It's over 11,000 apartments now.
Wow.
And we're building quite a few apartments. I would guess we will build 3,000 or 4,000 apartments in the next 4 years. And unlike what are called merchant builders who build apartments to then sell to investors, we build our apartments to keep for ourselves. We're very proud of our apartments. We think we do an excellent job. We can always do better, but we think we're really best in class where we are. And then we build for the long run. We hope we can keep them for decades and decades on. So we've got the planned communities, we've got shopping centers, and we got apartments. We've got a large property management group. Of our 700 employees, over half of them are in property management. We believe that we should manage and take care of the assets that we own. We want to own the relationship with the customers. And quite frankly, we think we do a better job than if we farmed it out to an outside company. And then something new for us that we hadn't done before was we've gotten very involved in industrial development. Southern California has become a real center worldwide of the logistics industry. And so if you drive down the freeways, you see very large industrial projects. We were a partner in a very large one in Rialto, where the Rialto airport was. We're partners in a very large project in Riverside County next to March Field. And this is where we've done deals with Amazon and Target and UPS and Burlington Coat and a lot of other companies. It's a growing business. It's a competitive one. It's hard to find sites, but we're very happy to be involved in the industrial business. And the last thing we talk about is sort of a catch-all for a lot of projects. We sometimes will just tackle complex mixed-use projects where there may be more than one use on a property. And so those usually take someone who's going to be in the community for decades. There's someone who's a problem solver and someone who's willing to take risks and invest. And we fit all of those categories. So those are the main businesses that we do. Over the years, we've built well over 60,000 houses and well over 10,000 apartments. Now it's 11,000 apartments. So probably there's close to 250,000 people live currently in homes or apartments that we've developed. That's a big city. And then we have tens of thousands of people who shop in our shopping centers or work in our office parks every day.
Well, you should be very proud. For those that just tuned in, we are listening to Randall Lewis, and your official title there is Executive Vice President with Lewis Management Company. And we're just thrilled to have the legendary, previously for many, many years, known as Lewis Homes. As you said, and I always knew at the time, they were the nation's largest privately owned builder right here based in Southern California. So when we say successful businesses that come from our region, it doesn't get any more pride than talking about Lewis family-owned business, now focused on master plan communities, commercial, high-density residential, and then you mentioned industrial. And we recently had Mark Thorpe, the CEO of the Ontario International Airport.
Oh, he's really fantastic. He's a great.
Isn't he just amazing?
He's great.
Yeah, and then not to be outdone, we had his equal, Paul Leone, the long-term mayor of the city of Ontario, that's won national awards. So, to see that you guys have integrated and worked together, and the old saying is, we don't plan to fail, we just fail to plan. And to see all the planning and another tip of the hat, what your family, you and your entire family, what you have done for the city of Rancho Cucamonga and all the cities around. Now, did your parents live in Rancho Cucamonga the whole time that they ran the business?
No, our roots were in Claremont. They lived in Claremont for ages.
Okay.
And then they moved to Rancho Cucamonga, I think late 80s or early 90s, and lived there for the rest of their lives.
And so they were right there by the college.
Those were their two main homes. And I should say, for people who joined in, we aren't called Lewis Homes now. We go by the Lewis Group of companies. And then within that, we have Lewis Planned Communities and Lewis Investment Company. We have Lewis Apartments and Lewis Retail. So we're proud of the name, and we use it in the name of our developments and our projects.
The Lewis Group of Companies.
Yes.
That's the 2020 official name, it's amazing to see how much growth it started in what year? 1950?
Well, no one's around who really remembers. We say 1955. I don't think there was a day when they said we're going to start a business. I think they probably thought of it in the 1952, 3, and 4 and got it going 55-ish. So we use that number, but I don't think there was one day that the company started. It was over time. It was a process. My parents were big students, and so they were always trying to learn. And I think that they took some time to say, what are the best practices of home building. And my mom got very involved in the land buying and also very involved in the floor plans. And growing up, I remembered we would have floor plans on the dining room table, and she'd be saying, how can I make the kitchen as perfect as possible? And how can I make the laundry room work? She always brought a woman's touch to it. And then my father was very involved in the finance and the construction and the legal part and the accounting part of the business. And then together they bought the land, and they used to use, my mom's name was Goldie, they used to use something called the Goldie test. And before they'd buy a piece of property, my mom would look at it and she'd say, is this somewhere where I would want to raise a family? And if not, we wouldn't buy the property.
Wow. Oh. Now the corporate headquarters back in the, I don't want to show my age, but it was many years ago as well, was in Upland on Mountain Avenue.
They still are.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
Yes. Yeah, we were in
Lewis
Claremont. We had a few offices in Claremont. We moved to Upland to 9th Street in the mid-1970s, and then we moved to Mountain Avenue. I believe it was in the late 1970s, and we've been here ever since.
That is some longevity. That is a real testament. And we're so lucky to have in Southern California another awe-inspiring, what started out sole proprietorship, that is still, to this day, the Lewis Group of Companies is still family-owned. Is that correct, Randall?
That is correct.
That is really amazing.
And we have a third generation. There's quite a few in the next generation. And I think right now 4 are working actively in the business, and a few others are sort of studying the business. I think they may stay with other careers, but all of them.
What area of the business are they working in?
My brother Richard has a daughter named Jennifer who is in Las Vegas, and she's very involved in the community. She's involved in some of the strategic planning, a lot of sort of the urban planning issues. She serves on a planning commission for one of the cities up there. And then I have 3 children who all work in the business. My oldest, Sarah's working in terms of looking at some sources of ancillary income. Where could we put billboards, or is there cell tower income, or are there things where we could make more money that we're not looking at? She's got some special projects too. Our son Riley is working, he was in land acquisition, and now he's moved over to the accounting group and doing some financial analysis and some investment analysis. And our youngest child, Rosie, just started in the business, and she's working with social media and branding and a lot of digital initiatives. And all of the next generation are really bringing in some fresh thinking. So we appreciate their efforts. And then their cousins, and we have quarterly family meetings, and their cousins pay a lot of attention, but they've had their own successful careers. So right now it's just 4 that are actively involved in the business, but we hope we can be an evergreen business that will go on for decades and decades.
I love that, Randall. And, it sounds like your parents laid the perfect foundation to continue, the Lewis Group of Companies for generations to come. And, as a woman, and knowing that your mother, Goldie, looked at the floor plans and made sure that it made sense for a woman that's raising a family in a home, that's very much appreciated in the mere fact that I've been to homes that are not Lewis homes, and you walk through the floor plans and you think,
what were they thinking?
What were they thinking? Why would they put the garage on the opposite side of in my view, of the kitchen, where we have to unload the groceries and put them into the refrigerator? Very simple things. It's like you have to walk across the entire house to, unload the groceries. So very, simple touches like that make such a tremendous difference. And I am so happy to hear that, the next generation, your children, are picking up, the banner of Lewis Group of Companies and moving forward into, the next generation. That's very inspiring.
And I should say that you have a keen eye, because those were good insights you had. Most of the builders now and most of the architects now, almost all of them, are very detail oriented. If you survived some of the downturns, this last downturn, especially 2008 through 2013 or 14, only the best survive. So hopefully you don't see those kinds of things if you look at houses from them. We've got good competitors.
That was a tough go. We're about to go to break. We're here with Randall Lewis with the Lewis Companies, Lewis Group of Companies. We will be right back, and we will have some more questions for Randall regarding his family. It's a fascinating story, and it's one of the most successful Southern California businesses in the entire real estate sector, and we will be right back.
Join Daryl Cance and Yvette Walker every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 AM, and on the internet at KMET TV for the Southern California Business Report. The show is dedicated to highlighting successful businesses and the individuals behind them. Daryl and Yvette interview the incredible people managing these enterprises that range from awe-inspiring sole proprietors to world-renowned organizations. The Southern California Business Report, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. on KMET AM and on the internet at KMET TV.
We are back with Randall Lewis of the Lewis Group of Companies, and he keeps correcting me because I'm showing my age. I keep trying to throw him back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s, and now they're into many different facets. And I got to tell you, on behalf of all of us residents of Southern California, as we said earlier, nearing 25 million, to have someone involved in building beautiful commercial shopping centers, amazing apartment buildings that look more like resorts. I mean, some of them are just amazing, and to have them professionally managed and a customer focus, as Randall shared. This is a family-owned business with tens of thousands of what do we say? Residential structures in particular. Did you say 250,000 structures? Did I hear?
250,000 people. I'm just guessing. We have over 70,000 homes or apartments, and we typically average 3.5 or so per person. And
wow.
So it's in that ballpark.
Right. So a lot of Californians, and then in addition, we've shared this secret, because Yvette and I love secrets. The secret of the Lewis Group of Companies has been shared with our friends over in Nevada. And what other state did you say you guys are operating in?
We're just in those two. We did a short stint in Utah, but really we're just California, Nevada. And in Nevada, my brother has lived there since the late 90s, 70s. And I've talked to people who say, oh, you're a Las Vegas-based company, and we understand you've got some operations in California. So he's viewed as a local. He and Jennifer Lewis are viewed just as locals up there because they've been there so much, and they're really part of the community.
That's great. Well, we had recently the head of surgery for City of Hope, and he transplanted from New York to Southern California, and we told him he cannot go back to New York. And we also had Bill Morris from UCI, who's teaching entrepreneurship out at their School of Business. We told him he cannot go back to New York. So we're selfishly putting a lid on the Lewis Group of Companies. We need you here in Southern California, and we're so thankful that we have such a high quality builder, and then more than that, into property management. And as you said, and I've noticed this since the 80s, that instead of building something and walking away from it, you've retained it and
Yes.
maintained it, and have satisfied the customers that you have, and you as a family have this customer service focus, and it just comes through. And now we always try to pull secrets out of our guests. So tell us what's coming. Anything exciting coming up anywhere in Southern California in particular?
Well, we've got a lot of new developments coming. So when you talk to most developers and say, what's your best development? They always say the next one, because you try to take the learning from the last one. So we've got active master plan communities in Chino and Ontario and Fontana. We've got a really fun one in a city called Santa Paula next to Ventura called Harvest, where it's got community gardens and edible landscaping, and the whole theme there is really a better way of life. So we're very excited about those. We're working at what used to be called the Empire Lakes. You mentioned resort. It's a community called The Resort, and it's got houses and apartments. It'll have some retail. It'll be next to transit. So that's a very exciting project that we're just at the beginning of.
What city is that in?
It's in Rancho Cucamonga.
Oh, beautiful.
Rancho Cucamonga. We've got a strong presence in Fontana and Rialto. So we're excited. We're doing some really fun stuff. And I get to work on that side of the business. So it's fun to work with the architects and the researchers and the designers to try to say, how do you create great planned communities or apartments? I mean, our goal is to always say, what do people want and how can we give it to them the best way? And we often look at our communities almost as a competitor would. I mean, we've got a very successful series of homes now, and we'll be engaging an architect to say, how do you better it? If a competitor were going to come, what would they do to beat it? Well, let's do that ourselves. So we're obsessed with getting better.
Well, that's definitely a tremendous obsession to have, Randall, and it shows in your final product. It shows how every, generation of your building just gets better and better, and that is a testament to your focus on quality and serving, your community. So thank you for that. And, Randall, as a formal planning commissioner, I know, the various hurdles, the red tape, a lot of the challenges that go alongside development. So, in today's market, especially in California, we're facing many challenges dealing with housing. And you're the expert. So tell us, please, what some of the barriers are to housing and what are some of the solutions we should be considering to overcome those barriers?
That's a great question. It's one I think about, and a lot of electeds and planning commissioners and agency people are thinking about. Housing is one of the real challenges we face in California, both to keep people and attract people. I mean, there have been a lot of articles, a number of people are leaving California. One of the main reasons given is the cost of housing. So we just need to do it for economic reasons, but social reasons too. It's a shame if you've got a family and the kids want to stay near their parents and their church and their friends, and they say, no, I'm going to move to Texas or Colorado or Arizona because I can get more affordable housing. There are a number of solutions. First, it goes to supply. I mean, on an easy development in California, if you buy a piece of land and you were lucky, it might take 18 months to go through the process. There's a few areas you could go quicker, but 18 months would be fast. On complicated ones, it could take 2 years to 4 years. And on some large scale community, big projects, it literally will take 10 or 20 or 30 years, and you still have that risk it'll never get done. So just getting through the process, it's really hard. And I think we need to think, how do you get through the process quicker? Still make sure you do the right work on it to take care of traffic and take care of all the sort of the impacts. So I think that's one issue. There's something called CEQA, which is something that was brought about to make sure that environmental issues were considered when new developments came. And CEQA, I think, was a good thing. Its intentions were good, but it's being used as a tool to stop a lot of good developments. And that's a bad thing. So I think we need CEQA reform in California to say, how can you still do adequate review, but not make it a tool where anyone can just stop a project? There's a lot of issues now, Yvette and Daryl, sort of what is the role of housing? This is a little bit complicated, but in the old days, the role of a house is for people to live in. Well, now the role of a house may be to help make up a city deficit. They'll say, we want to put in some extra fees to help pay for the city services, or to pay for a deficit in park space. We need extra park space, or to help pay more than a fair share for other services. It could be schools or something else. And I think if you talk to the housing industry, they would say they want to pay their fair share, but sometimes housing is asked to do more than its fair share. And I can understand why. If you need money, you go, where can you go make the new homeowner pay? But it makes it very, very expensive. And then just some of the design standards and the processes. We've found some progressive cities that have worked hard to say, how can we streamline processes? We did a great process in Chino recently where we got the planning staff. We did it over 3 or 4 trips, I can't remember. And we actually walked subdivisions with them and said, what were the things that worked and what were the things that didn't work? How can we get better? We're committed to getting better. And in the process, there were a number of design standards where even the city said, you know what, you don't have to do that on the next one. Maybe it's a treatment on the second floor or the roof that someone's not even going to see from the street. So I think win-win partnerships between the public and the private sector will be very, very important. We need to work on the supply of market rate housing, which is the world we deal in. But even more important, we need to think about the supply of affordable housing. I mean, what's happening with the homeless situation in California is just a sin. It's a terrible thing that it's happening. And even above the homeless situation, just the very affordable, the people that are barely scraping by. There have been articles in the newspapers that sometimes it can cost $400,000 or $500,000 to build one dwelling unit of affordable housing. And there's a lot of reasons, but that's just nutty. So we really need to think, how do we increase the supply of market rate housing for typical families? How do we do something that's desperately needed for the homeless? And then how do we do something for just the very bottom of the affordability range? So I think it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of partnerships between the public sector, the private sector. And I think there's a role for sort of some of the other groups. The universities are doing some very good research. Earlier, we talked about USC and UCLA. They're doing some very good stuff. Cal Poly Pomona is doing some very good work. I think we need to bring in our academic partners. And then there's the planning agencies. In my bio, you introduced me. I'm a member of the Southern California Association of Governments. They are one of the best think tanks in California for how to get solutions to problems like this. And I think it's just going to take sort of inspired and dedicated leadership to pull us all together and say, how do we work on these solutions?
Sounds like a big hill to climb, but you're part of all of the right organizations, think tanks, universities that are basically in the trenches trying to figure this out. So as you see the horizon, what are some of the proposed solutions that you have seen or that are being discussed to address the challenges that we see today?
Certainly there's a move towards more what's called density. And it might be to say, well, instead of building 4 houses on an acre, build 7 houses or 10 houses or even more, build townhouses. And there's been some real advances between land planning and architecture where you can build at these higher densities and you can't tell from the street that they're not the same old density. And yet if you can cut down on the cost of land and allocate the sewer and the block walls more efficiently, it dramatically impacts the cost structure. So I think more acceptance of density will be one of the things. I think things we're looking at that will be interesting is just what changes because of COVID. And I don't think we will return to normal in the sense of return to what it was. There's going to be a new normal, and that's still being discovered. I think we're going to see a lot more people working from home. I mean, we've all gotten used to Zoom meetings, and we found that it works. So I think we're going to see more houses getting designed differently. We're studying that now, and our competitors are too. We're looking at saying, how do you build in more nooks and crannies? If this were an interview 7 or 8 years ago, we would have talked about the great room and have these gigantic spaces where everyone sees each other. Well, while that's popular, now we're getting customers saying, I need little dens and I need little alcoves, because we might have 3 or 4 people at once on a computer on a Zoom call. So I think that's going to be a trend that we're going to see very different. I think we're going to see more indoor-outdoor living. I read an interesting article just yesterday about someone saying we need to use our backyards better, but we need to use our front yards better and maybe do more enclosed porches so people could do some work on their front porch, have it enclosed from the weather and noise and to give privacy. So it's actually a very exciting time in the house design side. There's so much happening. And then, of course, there's the role of technology. We really are facing a problem with what's called the digital divide. And I think we as a state and we as a company have to get internet and digital access to all members of the population. And so I think that will be one of the innovations we and everyone will have to work on to say, how do we make sure everybody in the state gets good access? Because you just can't survive in this kind of climate. I think one of the other things that just, because of things that have happened in 2020 and because of things that have happened before, I think we need to think about how to have a more equitable economic recovery and a more inclusive economic recovery. That then, as we've come out of the COVID thing, we're not out of it, but as we're moving towards a solution, we've seen that not all people have been treated equally by the impacts of COVID and the impacts of this economy. And I think it behooves all of us to say we need everybody to be treated well. We've got to be as inclusive as possible. Because Bruce Springsteen has this saying, no one wins unless everybody wins. And I truly believe that we have to make everybody successful or the state's not going to be successful.
Just tuned in. We are here with Randall Lewis of the Lewis Companies. And we really appreciate, we're now talking, and sorry, Yvette,
no problem.
Talked over. I just wanted to make sure we let all the listeners know who we have with us today. We're thrilled to have one of the premier builders of commercial properties, industrial properties, multifamily properties, high-density properties, single-family residences. They've had national leadership and all based out of Southern California. And Yvette, go right ahead. You had a question.
Oh, well, I just wanted to move along into your philanthropic effort. So when you talk about, this equitable future as we move forward into 2021 for all people, do you see that as a product of philanthropic efforts? How do you see that structured? And can you also share some information about what philanthropic efforts basically move you and what you're involved in and the things that propel a vision that you see for our communities?
Well, there's ever so much. For me, it started with my parents. They grew up very poor in the Depression, especially my father. And so as they achieved some success, they always told us, you have an obligation to give back to the communities when you're successful. And then also coming from them, they decided to try to focus on some activities. So as a family and as a company, and certainly for me personally, I spent a lot of time on health and education initiatives, and lately very involved in some entrepreneurial initiatives on how to spur job creation. On the health side, for probably the last 25 years, we've been looking to see how can we build places that can improve health and not contribute to bad health. It could be walking trails. It could be better gymnasiums in our clubhouses. It could be partnerships with the school district, partnerships with the city or the YMCA. But we look at every new development we do through a health lens. We also are working with quite a few local institutions, with the University of La Verne, the San Antonio Hospital, with Cal Poly Pomona, with a group called the Urban Land Institute, and many, many more, to try to say, how can we invest in health initiatives to train future health leaders? We also do a lot with education. And my parents used to just say, health and education are so key to people. So we partner with a number of universities and a number of school districts trying to say, how can we give back to build stronger schools? Because that's growing our future customers, it's growing our future leaders, it's growing our future newscasters and teachers and doctors and attorneys and nurses and first responders. So very involved in that. And then lastly, something for me personally, I'm very interested in the entrepreneur side and the innovation side to try to think, how can we play a small part in growing more businesses? So much of the work we do is in the Inland Empire. And it's something where we don't have the job base and we don't have the number of startups that we might see in LA or Orange County or San Diego County. So I think in the next couple of years, you'll see me investing quite a bit of my time and resources to try to think, how can we be part of a larger effort? We're not the only one doing this, but a larger effort to say, how can we grow jobs? Because then if people are healthy and they're educated and they have jobs, life will be good. So that's a big focus for us right now.
That is
once
tremendous.
Again, on behalf of all of our listeners, we've been just thrilled to have the Lewis Group of Companies. Again, see, I'm doing better now. Lewis Group of Companies.
Thank you.
We have Randall Lewis here, no problem. And before we run out of time, I just want to put in another thank you for all that you and your family has done for Southern California. You know, we have, I shared earlier that I actually lived in a Lewis home for decades. And, you know, so what's the old saying go? Not only am I familiar, but I'm a member. So when you talk about customers, many people say that, and many people intend to follow through on that. But actually walking the walk is a rarity. And, you know, you have walked the walk. You guys have talked the talk, and we've all been better off because of the Lewis Group of Companies. And I would encourage, as you talked earlier about when you guys are looking to develop and the different obstacles and the different expenses, and as you're trying to be finding that win-win, you know, I would encourage anybody, if you have an opportunity to have the Lewis Group of Companies come in town, share your voice. You know, Yvette, you were there on the planning commission. You have that background. To me, it's a big honor when Lewis Group of Companies comes in, because every detail will be done correctly. The shopping center will be beautifully built, beautifully managed, beautifully maintained for decades, not 20 minutes, but 20 decades. You know, it's
Exactly.
just, you know, it's just a real testament to your family. I've been really looking forward to this. When Yvette said we're going to have you on today, I was like a little kid, because I, you know, having been so familiar with your family by reputation only. And today's the first day, really, I've had a chance to meet Randall Lewis. Yvette, you've had a long-term relationship and friendship with the Lewises. And any other, you have the final questions, Yvette. I know you've been looking forward to it.
Well, one of the questions I want to hear, you know, one of the answers, one of the responses I would like to hear from Randall is, what makes you optimistic for 2021? You know, if you could share with us some of the things you're seeing in the industry that creates this optimism, what would that be?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons. First, we still are suffering terribly through the COVID crisis, but I think with the vaccine, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's still going to be more suffering. We've got to be very careful, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So that is one. I think second, being in California, the spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship and sort of nice people, there's a lot of good things in California. I think one thing that makes me optimistic, I think in some ways we as a state and some in Sacramento may have lost their way and have driven some companies out of the state. And I think now there's an awareness, especially in the last month or two, that the state needs to do more to be business friendly. And so I think as that light bulb comes on more and more, that will be good. And then just by nature of it, I'm an optimistic person. So I was raised that way. So we always try to think, how do you just make the best of every situation? So with that, I want to thank both of you for this opportunity. I also want to just thank the communities where we do business and our trade partners. This has all been about all of us and our employees, but we couldn't do it without the communities that we're in. You know, we couldn't do it without so many trade partners and suppliers and consultants. So big thanks to all of them also.
Very, very nice. Yeah, we're, you know, it's funny how it all turns into a big team. You know, Yvette and I are very optimistic. We're positive. We only bring on successful Southern California businesses because it helps everybody. It gets everybody optimistic, positive. You know, success breeds success. And, you know, anybody I would say that is excited about the real estate industry should really, really study the Lewis Group of companies, because it's a case study in, I'm sure, lots of lessons learned, just
And
perfecting
mistakes
your
made. We
craft.
make our share of mistakes. We hopefully fix them. Mistakes made also.
Well, I lived in one of your homes for decades. I couldn't find one. I go, I'll find one around here somewhere, and I just could not find one. But no, we're very, very fortunate. And as we said at the onset of the show, you are the first company in the entire real estate sector that we've had on.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, and it's a great honor. And we would hope that if there's anything that we can broadcast out to the Southern California region of anything coming up, never hesitate to reach out to Yvette or myself. We would love to get you back on air.
Oh, sure.
Because you're a part of one of the three major food groups: food, transportation, and housing.
Yes.
Okay, and it's no fun without housing.
No.
So Yvette, why don't you close us out? We're down to our final minute. And thank you so much, Randall
My
Lewis.
pleasure.
with the Lewis
Happy to
Group of
come
Companies.
back if I can ever help in any way.
Yes. Thank you so much, Randall, for taking the time to be with us today. And for everyone that's listening today, please remember you can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So don't forget to follow us and catch this interview later. Share it with your friends and stay connected. Thank you all so much.
And download our app
Yes, and download our app.
on Apple or whatever device you prefer.
This has been the Southern California Business Report with Daryl Cance and Yvette Walker on KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio, a show dedicated to highlighting successful Southern California businesses and the people behind them. Log on to the show's website and remember to visit the podcast page.